If your gym anxiety has you skipping the gym, or worse, delaying your strength training journey by weeks, months, years, even decades, today is the day. We are going to crush this thing together. I just wanna dance, 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 dance. I just wanna dance, dance. There's so many positive benefits from being in the gym, not just for the gains and the benefits associated with longevity, independence, and things like that. But I do think the gym can also be an amazing third place that helps you de-stress, even make friends, and just generally be a positive space that builds you up. I am very empathetic to all the different anxieties that can crop up when it comes to being in the gym. Luckily, it's an environment that I feel like I've conquered, and it makes me sad when other people don't get to experience all the positive benefits, not only miss out on that, but also have the gym cause additional stress when life in this crazy world is stressful enough. So today I wanted to break down different types of gym anxiety, a lot of which I think is kind of like social anxiety or even plain insecurity, just specialized to a gym environment. As someone who has a lot of clients who are just beginning strength training, I've heard a lot of different anxieties. So I'm gonna tackle them one by one, and we are going to put this to rest. So I first want to talk about generalized gym anxiety, which is the feeling of when you're stepping in the gym, you immediately get just a sense of like, oh my gosh, I'm not familiar with this environment. I almost liken it to stepping into a party or a networking event or conference or something like that, and you're not really sure where you slot in yet. You're feeling a sense of unease and not being fully bought in to the fact that you belong in that space. I think there's a couple points here. One is honestly internalizing the fact that nothing bad is happening to you. I think when we feel this very general sense of anxiety, it can be very intangible, and maybe we can't even explain what we're anxious about in words. We just kind of viscerally feel anxious, and I think one of the best ways to tackle that is intentionally calming down your nervous system when you're in that environment. My recommendation to systematically get over this is when you first enter a gym, before you panic, before you think, what am I doing, blah, 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 is to sit or stand somewhere and just breathe, and then telling yourself, I'm just existing here. Worst case, I can just leave if it gets that bad, but it's not that bad because I'm just standing in a room. I would follow up that point though with another one, which is to actually have a plan. Having a plan is helpful. Ideally, you have a notes app where you've written out what your program is that day, not just a mental note that you could suddenly blank on. I do think not having a plan, especially when you're a beginner, can induce unnecessary anxiety, because then you're just going off of exercises that you have tried in a class sometime or that you've seen people doing online. And without a rhyme or reason behind that, it can easily feel like you don't actually have a purpose in the gym. But when you go in with a plan and you know, hey, I'm working XYZ muscles today, you inherently feel like you have a purpose and that you belong in that space. After all, where else are you supposed to go to get the gains? And important point number 3, to nip the generalized gym anxiety bud in the head. To nip the generalized gym anxiety in the bud. Nip in the bud is to stop reading other people's minds. The voices that we create for other people who are literally not saying anything to us and often not even looking our direction is pretty wild. We write some really, really great fiction when we're anxious. I honestly have this mantra where there's stuff that's my business, there's stuff that's other people's business, and then there's stuff that is the business of the universe or higher power, whatever you believe in. The thoughts that other people are thinking, unless they explicitly want to vocalize them to me and have me consider them in some way, are just not my business. But even to build on that, those thoughts are complete fiction. If you're in the business of making up what other people are thinking, you might as well tell yourself that they're saying really great things about you. Replace all those toxic thoughts of that person's such a beginner, whatever you're stressed about, and replace that with she fine, she looks smart, I don't know, whatever positive qualities you like in yourself. If you are going to entertain making up things that other people might be thinking about you, you might as well make up things that build you up. Okay, so those are my thoughts on generalized gym anxiety. I'm now going to get into what I would call acute gym anxiety, aka specific situations that might trigger a little bit more anxiety that you can just as easily develop similar strategies for. One is the anxiety of looking inexperienced or looking out of shape. The second anxiety that I'm going to talk about is just not knowing how to use equipment or a machine, or just not being as confident about how to do an exercise. Number 3 is the feeling of taking up space that other people could be using or are waiting for. And 4 is the anxiety around getting injured, not making progress. Okay, so case number 1, looking like a beginner or out of shape. The first thing that I think is helpful to remind people is that looking fit is really subjective. There are literally Olympic level athletes, world record holders that wouldn't fall under our conventional standards of what it looks like to be fit. You can be really strong and capable and just look different from that. That said, I don't think it's helpful to deny the fact that there are body fat ranges, there's muscle mass ranges that are associated with improved longevity and reduced disease risk. And I do think a lot of the forces that shape our modern life just don't lend way to being in those ranges for a lot of people. I have a lot of clients that are in their late 20s or early 30s, and it's really the first time that they are embarking on strength training. When you have a sedentary job, when you haven't been strength training, most likely you're A, under-muscled, and or B, have a little bit of extra fat on your body. And I think a lot of people don't have empathy for themselves for why they are in that position. We live in a world where people are busy. It's hard to make a living, and a lot of people end up for many, many years prioritizing their work and other commitments over their health, and only realize later in life that they really do need to prioritize their health. I think everyone has to remind themselves that the average person who goes to a gym is probably going to look more fit. If you're literally just taking a gym population, there's always going to be people that are really, really fit in the gym, and then there's going to be people who are starting out, and a bunch of people who are a year, 2 years, whatever, how many years into their journey. So I really think the first thing here is honestly just to feel great about starting. You are making a really, really positive change in your life that not everyone makes, and I think that's something to celebrate. That might sound simple, and some people, unfortunately, I think bog themselves down with the heaviness of letting themselves get to a certain point, not having started earlier, and things like that. But it doesn't matter where you came from. What matters is where you're going. The second point I want to make here is that consistency can create huge amounts of progress. Wherever you are today is temporary. I think some people can get in the trap of knowing they need to make a change, going to the gym, but then feeling like they don't belong in the gym such that they don't do anything about it, and then they're in the same position that they've been in for years and years. I personally would rather deal with the discomfort of looking like one of the least fit people in a room, which is what I did when I started training. I was at 34% body fat when I decided to really lock in and commit to my health. And I let that gap between where I was and where I wanted to be, defined as healthy body fat percentage and muscle mass, be the motivation that inspired me to keep going. And it's pretty insane the transformation that can happen in just a couple years. This is less of a strength training example, but I had a roommate in SF who had a little bit of extra fat on his body, and made sense because we all had office jobs. We were prioritizing other things in our early to mid 20s. This guy started training. He set his sights on doing a triathlon, and I would train with him, and we started at a really, really similar point. And I ended up moving to LA. I for several years continued to prioritize work while my ex-roommate continued to stay committed to his triathlon and endurance sport goals. And just 2 or 3 years later, he looked insanely fit, and he was achieving amazing times in all the races that he was doing. Seeing someone go from point A to point B in just a couple years made me realize the power of just keeping at it. The final point that I would just bring back around to this anxiety of looking like a beginner, looking out of shape, is it doesn't matter what other people think of you. Insert everything I said before about reading other people's minds. All right, acute anxiety condition number 2, not knowing how to use a machine, use certain equipment, or do a certain exercise. This is really common, and by necessity, there is a learning curve to anything in the gym. Typically, what I tell clients is the first 2, 3, even 4 times, you might just even be getting the basics of an exercise. And then even say like a year, 2 years down the road, you might still be making tweaks and things like that. So learning is just a normal process of being in the gym. This is something though that you can take a good amount of action on. Number 1 is if you work with a good trainer, Ideally, they would give you great examples of what good form looks like so you can prepare before you go into the gym. There's also a good amount of resources online on how to do XYZ exercise that you can search up. I actually think it's easier to figure out how to use exercises that just involve dumbbells compared to even machines sometimes. Every machine has different adjustments. The handles and whatnot can be in different places on different brands of these machines. Even me now, when I'm seeing new machines at my gym, which my gym has tons of niche random machines that I've never seen before but want to try, it does just take a second to learn how to use the actual machine. So know that you're not doing anything wrong by trying to adjust different things, doing one rep of something and wanting to change the adjustment again. All that is completely normal. That said, despite all the finagling that you might be able to do yourself, sometimes it is best to just ask someone else at the gym how to do something. And here's what I've learned. Most people want to help you. If you see someone using a machine at the gym and you've tried to use it before and it just hasn't felt right, honestly, when they're done their set, it's a good time to just ask them like, hey, do you mind showing me how to use this machine? And they will show you all the different settings and whatnot so that you know how to adjust the machine so it's right for you. I once asked this really buff looking guy at the gym how to use a hamstring curl machine, and he showed me how to use it. He was super nice. We got to chat. He even came back around later and asked me how I liked the machine after I had done all of my sets. So don't be afraid to ask for help in the gym. I think sometimes people can be like, whoa, that sounds crazy. But worst case, that person is busy and you can just ask someone else. I know when you're newer to the gym, it can feel a little bit like, am I supposed to talk to other people? Like everyone has headphones in now, what am I supposed to do? But usually people are in the gym to better themselves and they want to help you get better as well. Okay, acute anxiety number 3 is the feeling of taking up space in the gym. And I've heard people express this in situations where, say there's a pretty popular piece of equipment and you've gotten there first, but it's clear that someone else wants to use it and that person's looking fit AF. And you're out here as a beginner doing lightweight for now. I want to say once and for all, just because someone lifts more weight than you does not mean they deserve to use the equipment more than you. Anyone deserves to use equipment when they're using it properly, putting in a solid training effort, and being mindful of how much time they're taking in between sets. None of that has anything to do with the absolute amount of weight that you're lifting. When I see someone at the gym genuinely putting in a good effort, not taking too much time between sets, and their form is good enough that they're not going to get injured doing it, I respect it. I respect the hustle. I think it's a really great thing to be in the gym and be improving yourself. And so when I see people putting in a genuine effort, it doesn't matter how much they're lifting. I respect it. I see the game. So even if someone is waiting, if you have a plan and you're executing your plan, you're not checking your phone for 3 to 5 minutes in between sets, you deserve to take up space. There are sometimes situations in these really busy commercial gyms where people will ask you, how many sets do you have left? And that's not a bad thing. That shouldn't throw you off. A lot of people just try to get a sense of how long they might be waiting because either they're going to decide to keep waiting or they're going to pivot their plan. And it's not subtext for why are you taking so long? It's not. I promise it's not. It only is if you are being disrespectful by taking way too much time in between your sets. Or if you just have some sort of plan that doesn't make sense that involves doing like 20 sets of something, which I would argue is a bit excessive. And honestly, for the record, just because Mr. Meatball is lifting 3 plates on each side on bench does not mean he gets to do whatever he wants. Everyone at the gym should be paying attention to using the equipment conscientiously and mindfully so that other people at the gym can take advantage of it. All right, final anxiety number 4, fear of injuring yourself or not making progress or something like that. I think both of these are extremely addressable. Whenever I work with a client, I have a very clear checklist of 5 things that they should be doing to avoid injury. Things like 1, take some time to study the form before you go to the gym. 2, practice the form using really light weight. 3, once you get the hang of it, increase your weight, but incrementally, not making any big jumps. To me, injury is not a mental thing. When you're taking the right steps, you shouldn't be anxious about injury. You should only be anxious about injury if you haven't taken any of those steps. And when it comes to making progress and things like that, sometimes people can get stressed that, I'm not lifting more weight than I was last week. I'm not doing more reps. And there's so many factors that go into that. From a trainer's perspective, there are very, very tangible things that a client should be executing on to make sure that they are steadily improving their strength. So I would always check, is my client lifting heavy enough? Are they doing enough volume on this exercise? Are they going to the gym consistently? Are they getting enough sleep? Are they eating enough? When you execute all of these building blocks well, the result is that you improve in the gym. I think it's more about executing the actions that are going to get you to your goals. I think that kind of sums things up. I've certainly had my fair share of being a beginner, not only like a pure beginner in the gym, but also building in new elements to my routine that make me feel like a beginner at times. But my mindset has completely changed from when I was truly a beginner to now. I think that it's so powerful when you can shut out all of these thoughts and just focus on doing the good work, getting yourself to where you want to be. All of this other stuff is distractions that are very valid, again, super valid, but just unhelpful. So I would love to hear in the comments which of these anxieties most resonate with you, which strategies you're gonna try. If there's anything that I haven't mentioned that you think will help someone else in the gym, something that you worked through yourself, I'd love to hear that as well. If you are looking for an online coach, I've had dozens of clients who've either started strength training for the first time with me or would consider themselves pretty experienced in the gym, but worked through plateaus in their progress with me. I've had clients go from hating the gym to finally falling in love with the gym. A lot of my clients are people who prioritize their career for the longest time, like me when I was a manager at a major consulting firm working 60 hours a week. And I've worked with these clients on building in sustainable fitness routines into their life to support their fitness goals. If any of that sounds relevant to you, I've linked my coaching website below. Feel free to schedule a free intro call with me. And finally, I'd appreciate it so much if you liked and subscribed to my channel as I get started here on YouTube. Happy training!